Welcome to another episode of Southern Spirituals, a pagan podcast. I'm your host, Hallie, and this weekend, Lady Thorn is taking some time to rest and recuperate and needs all of the healing energy that we could possibly send her. Today, we're opening up with our second themed day, Freaky Friday, where we're going to dive into the paranormal. We're going to talk about different ways that you can start working with the paranormal, how it relates to spirituality, and go over a few spooky stories from the Southeast United States. So let's first begin with a little disclaimer that the paranormal idea is not specific to a path. It's not specific to a person. In this, we are not saying or invalidating anyone's experience. And we will take a look at many different accounts that have had multiple stories shared that share ideas, share experiences, things that we can kind of put more into the confirmed category. But that does not mean at all that your personal experiences are not just as valid. I'd also love to hear some personal experiences, some real world ghost stories from anywhere in the Southeastern United States. So please feel free to share your story with us. I'll again link the email in the comments sections all over anywhere that you'll find this podcast. And please share with us your story. And who knows, maybe one day it'll be included on an episode. So let's take a look at paranormal investigation and spiritual practice and how the two relate to each other. Paranormal investigation, since the late 1800s, has been a very taboo yet interesting subject. It draws people in like a moth to the flame because no matter what idea or area of belief that you are in, there's always this draw to the other side. There's always this notion that something else sometimes is around. And the idea of paranormal investigation is that people go in and connect with these spirits, generally to find an answer of why they're there, cleanse to get rid of them if it is something that is malicious or showing malintent. Or maybe help a lost soul kind of cross to the other side, one that has been stuck here for one reason or another, and hope to bring that soul that wonderful eternal peace. No matter what the reason is for paranormal investigation, this is all about connecting with spirits, hearing them through different psychic and typically electronic means of communication. Lots of electronics are used because these frequencies and these wavelengths tend to lend a hand to the frequencies and wavelengths that these spirits work on. So we're able to translate a little bit of what their experience is, why they're here, what they're saying, and whether or not they mean us harm. Paranormal investigation and paranormal practice has kind of found a widespread connection to spiritual practice, with some of the earliest confirmed being the exorcisms within the Catholic Church. This is a form of understanding that there is something beyond our physical realm that is at play at times in our world. We see this evolve into the works of Ed and Lorraine Warren and how they began to connect with not only spirits, but the locations where the spirits were, opening up the energies that filled these houses and these lands and purging them if they were malicious or carried malintent, or helping them again to settle into the great beyond. In Volume 76 of the Sociology of Religion, Mark A. Eaton gives us a wonderful article. Give us a sign of your presence. Paranormal investigation as a spiritual practice. This was published in 2015. And in this particular article, and I quote, paranormal investigation has functioned as a spiritual practice for many investigators in that it allowed them to feel like they were connecting to a divine, supernatural, or transcendent order of reality. Investigators' motives, methods, and the meanings they drew from investigating depended upon their prior spiritual and scientific orientation. Generally, the practice both conformed to and helped confirm investigators' belief, though for some it was a catalyst for spiritual transformation. This would go to explain why lots of times those who experience um, exorcisms or paranormal experiences while they are part of a Catholic or Christian church will sometimes broaden their spiritual horizons and grow into these other forms of spiritual practice. Sometimes we utilize these investigations to validate our belief systems, especially if you already have a pre-established religious doctrine that you follow. This is seen lots in the Roman Catholic Church. This is also seen a lot within the pagan systems that are more shamanic and connected to the earth. These will have more of that confirmation and validation of your power, your spiritual practice. These tie together the idea that what you're doing is quote unquote working. However, with that, there have been evidence of ghosts or ghostly connections since before these ideas of their religious faith and before the ideas of these particular belief systems. So, what if this isn't part of confirming your spiritual practice and this isn't part of validating what you're doing? What if you are just simply existing and you come across a paranormal presence in your home? What do you do? How do you get rid of it? How do you know whether it is malicious or if it has the need to cross over? There's also ways to be able to tell the difference between house spirits, spirits that generally are a part of your home and a part of your abode, and those that are kind of stuck here or having malicious intention. In doing this, you generally will want to either hone your personal psychic practice to be able to tap into and feel more of these connections, or you can bring in someone that has these skills already and have kind of already honed them. Once you're able to determine or have someone help you to determine what this spirit is, generally, you want to begin the process of protecting yourself from the connections of this spirit. Even if the spirit is not showing malicious intent, you want to ensure that there is not going to be this connection between you and this entity. The reason why is because this can affect you psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. You can have this heaviness on you without malicious intent that bogs you down and it truly disrupts your life and your spiritual practice. So, you want to, the very most simple, basic idea is begin working with your wards and begin carrying a ward on your person, an amulet or a charm that projects this safe, sacred space around you. This will allow you to communicate with the paranormal being without it attaching itself to you. This will allow you to work with the presence without it affecting you psychologically and emotionally. Once you have determined whether the spirit needs to be banished or whether the spirit needs to have some help being coaxed into the next realm, then you'll want to decide how best it is to clear your space of it. This can be aggressive if you need to remove something malicious and you want to stand firm in your roots. You want to perform a ritual that will banish this creature, especially if you can determine what type it is. And you want to make sure that you are protecting your space and protecting your home with, if you are religious in your spiritual practice with religious objects, you want to utilize crystals, red brick dust, black salt. You want to smoke cleanse the place. I highly suggest to cleanse it with a mixture of copal and myrrh if you're able to. If you're dealing with something larger and you need a little bit of that Catholic touch to go in it, utilize that mixture with a little bit of palm oil. Your house will smell like a church for a bit, but it's going to help get rid of those deeper, darker demons. When we begin to work with those who just simply need help crossing over, your ritual should be more in the ideas of crossing over than it should be in banishing. With this, this would include different ways for you to calm, validate, and support the spirit as it goes through. One of the big things I want to address before we go into one of our ghost stories is how to prepare yourself for bringing in these different entities. So, the care that you should utilize when working with a Ouija board is ensuring that you are not inviting anything to stay, that you are not bringing anything out and connecting it with your space. You are simply communicating with it. You're not inviting it in. You're not asking for it to do anything. Simple communication. This is another wonderful example of when you will want to have your charged ward amulet or charm on your being to ensure that you are protected. You also want to ensure that you are utilizing the Ouija board in a safe, sacred space where you have cast a protective circle around it to ensure that anything that is communicating does not decide to make its own way in. With this, I would love to share with you a few tales that I found in the JSTOR library. For those of you who don't know what JSTOR is an academic publication and library that encompasses all of the academic works of the world. It is one that all of your highly recommended and respected academic professionals and professors and experts in their fields are connected with. So let's look at the story Legends from ISU student Matt Hancock in November of 1995. Have you heard of any things that you are not supposed to do or you are supposed to do when playing with the Ouija board? I have been told that you are not supposed to do these things, but I don't know for sure. You're not supposed to ask the board to predict death or when you die because it will cause you to die. You are never supposed to throw the board away. The only thing that can get rid of all the spirits is to burn the whole thing. You are not supposed to play by yourself because you can be drawn into the spiritual worlds. When I was younger, we talked about playing the Ouija board during a Sunday school class, and my teacher told us that it is the Catholic belief that you sell your soul to the devil the first time you play with one. I guess you are never supposed to ask to talk to Satan or if Satan's spirit is the one that you are talking to. I've also heard that if the triangle moves off of the board, you are supposed to immediately turn it upside down, that it is to clear you from any danger. I think that when the triangle pointer starts going around and around on the board, you are to turn the pointer upside down and tap it on the board. This should relieve the room from the evil spirit that would be in there. And you are not supposed to leave the game board sitting out after you are done playing the game because it automatically attracts spirits to the room. You are to put everything back in the box and store it in the closet. Now, most of us as spiritual practitioners know and understand that a lot of these things don't happen with the Ouija board, but there is caution to be taken. Again, a protective circle that is put around it as you work with it to ensure that you are in a controlled space. Personal protection. I am a big fan of ensuring that the Ouija board is covered when it is not in use once it has been like sanctified for use. This is more so out of respect for the spirits and the ancestors. This is the same thing you would do with a properly formed ancestor altar or a set of throwing bones. You want to ensure that they are put to sleep while you're no longer working with them. A little bit of this particular legend is kind of far fetched. And these are some of the more original warnings that came with the quote unquote game as it was released in the early 1900s. So let's look at an actual supernatural experience that came from Terre Haute, Indiana. This one from a man named Justin in just 2003. Tell me what happened at 12:24. During fall break of the 2000-2001 school year, I decided to stay at school with some of my fraternity brothers and other friends. There were only a few guys left at the house, and we decided that they were going to play on the Ouija board just for fun. It was a Friday night. I didn't have anything else to do, and I never really used a Ouija board before, so I was up for the occasion. We took the board and a candle up to the room on the third floor. Matt and I started off on the board. We turned out the lights, lit the candle, and then Matt and I did a figure eight with the pointer to warm up the board. Then we waited. Jessica was sitting on the couch with two of the guys just watching. At first, nothing really happened. But then the pointer started to move. We asked it some typical questions like, "Do you want to talk? And will you show yourself?" The pointer moved to yes, meaning that the spirit did want to talk and it would show itself to us. We waited for a few minutes and nothing really happened. Once again, we asked if the spirit would give us some indication it was in the room. The pointer started to move off of the board toward the handle. As soon as it was off the board, it stopped moving, and the boys did the figure eight again and asked if the same spirit was still there. After establishing that it was in fact the same one, we asked for it to show itself. Instead of moving off the board or saying yes, the pointer moved to the letter C. We finally realized it wants us to blow out the candle. So we asked, and the pointer moved to yes. We waited for a while, and finally, then a breeze blew the bedroom door open. But instead of shutting like it usually did, because the house was slanted, and in order to keep it open, it had to be propped up. It just hovered between open and closed. At first, we thought it was a draft or something, but after opening the door all the way, expecting it to shut, it went back to its stance between open and closed. Believing a bit more than we were before, we decided to find out whom it was we were talking to. However, all we had to figure that out were the letters C and R. After much guessing, one of the guys figured out the letters were initials for Chapman Root. While it made sense that the man whom they had both previously owned this house and died here was trying to communicate with us, we were all a bit skeptical. So we decided to test this spirit a little. We asked him what it was he was famous for, and the pointer began to spell out COKE for the Coke bottle. Next, we asked something a little more difficult. What's your middle initial? Only one of the guys, Rich, knew the answer to this question, as he was familiar with the history of the house. Matt and I, the two still with their fingertips on the pointer, had no idea what the answer was. Slowly, the pointer moved to the J. Now we were slightly more convinced and a little freaked out. We decided to ask an even harder question. After all, J could have been dumb luck, especially if Matt was purposefully moving the pointer. When did you die? Again, only Rich knew the answer to that question. And as the pointer moved to 1920, Rich practically jumped out of his skin. That's right, he whispered. After we established who we were talking to, the boys started to ask Root questions about if he liked them living there. They asked things like, do you like the people here? Do you think we're treating the house okay? Do you care when we have parties out in the carriage house? Overall, it seemed that Root was fine with the fraternity living there and the entire goings on that took place there. Once the questions started to end, the messages became a bit more cryptic. Root would move the pointer to one letter on the board, and everyone would try to guess what it was he was trying to tell us. Soon it seemed that he became frustrated and began to request a new participant by moving to a completely different letter very quickly. He moved to the letter J. Does this mean you want Josh to leave? Matt asked. He answered no. Does this mean you want Jessica to take my place? Matt asked again. This time he replied yes. And as much as she did not want to, Jessica sat across from me and put her fingertips on the pointer. This was the first time she'd ever used a Ouija board. The pointer moved to D, then M. Everyone tried to figure out what Root was telling us with those two letters. After many guesses, Jessica decided to ask if it was Deidre Messmer. She was one of Jessica's friends from home that none of us at school knew at all. The pointer moved to yes. After that, she decided she'd had enough and asked if Matt could take my place. The answer was again yes, and took her place back on the couch. What turned out to be so strange about Root giving Jessica Deidre's initials was the next day when Jessica told her about it, she was like, Oh my god, I was getting these weird calls last night. I would pick up the phone and no one would be there. There was no breathing or anything, just dead silence. Just as we were deciding it was time to wind down, one of the other guys who had not been with us the whole time and who didn't believe in a bit of this Ouija board stuff came in order to prove that they weren't moving the pointer and that it was real. Matt and I covered our eyes with the collars of our shirts and pointed our faces towards the ceiling, so there was no doubt we couldn't see the board. We began to ask questions, and the pointer moved itself directly over the yes, no, and other letters in its answer. During this time, Matt and I were getting a little scared because we both knew that neither of us could see the board and we weren't moving it with our hands since it was going directly over the letters. After that, we decided it was time to say goodbye to Mr. Root because things were getting a little too scary. So, this is a good example of spirits going a little rampant and wild because the proper precautions were not taken to keep things confined. Um, so again, definitely want to use your protective circles and utilize your wards, utilize your crystals that will keep things contained to a specific area as to not touch other things in your life that will have a lasting effect or will allow this energy to I don't want to use the word escape, but kind of run rampant around because this has now traveled through electronics. This has contacted other people. And although you may be done with the Ouija board, we don't know what happened with Chapman Root at the end of this. We don't know if they continued to have some other issues. This may be something I may look into for another episode. But in working with that, you have invited them in and given them a space to work with you. So, this is why it is so important to take these precautions. I will go ahead and leave you all with that. And next week, we will touch on some real, actual ghost stories that don't have anything to do with Ouija boards from the Southeast United States. We'll start with a few of them in Georgia, and we will touch on a few larger ones too, like the Bell Witch in Tennessee. I will see you guys again on Sunday for our Sunday updates, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Blessed be and blessed moons.